Have you ever opened your grocery app, built the exact same cart you always do, and thought, why does this feel higher than last time? You're not imagining it, and what I'm about to reveal about online grocery pricing will fundamentally change how you view your shopping cart. I felt that too. As someone who's tracked grocery prices for years, I know my staples, my stores, my rhythms. But recently, even ordering pickup, the numbers stopped lining up. A deep investigation into how online grocery prices actually work finally explained why that uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. What they found suggested prices may not be changing by accident, or even the same way for everyone. Most of us assume it's just delivery fees, inflation, or perhaps we've simply forgotten what things cost. So, we shrug, we check out, and we move on. However, an extensive investigative report by Consumer Reports and More Perfect Union suggests something far more intentional may be happening behind the scenes, particularly with online grocery and pickup orders, not just delivery. I'll link the original investigation below because it's truly worth watching in its entirety. But the crucial takeaway is this. This isn't just inflation, it isn't random, and it's not always store employees setting these prices. Once you understand what's happening, especially online, grocery shopping begins to feel very different. Nothing in this video truly surprised me. As a frugal woman, a former stay-at-home mom who had to stretch every dollar, and someone who has spent decades observing prices, patterns, and systems, I've sensed this shift for a long time. Groceries used to be predictable. Sales cycles made sense, and you could learn a store's rhythm. But somewhere along the way, prices stopped behaving logically. The investigation I watched finally provided that ha-ha moment. The experiment that changed everything involved a simple setup. Researchers brought several people into a room and asked them to order groceries via Instacart for pickup, not delivery. They all selected the same store in the same town, choosing identical items from the same house. Yet, their final totals varied significantly. Taking this further, they gathered hundreds of people and had them shop for the exact same items at a couple of different stores. What they discovered was startling. While grocery prices naturally fluctuate based on location, this was different. People were charged varying prices for the same items. Sometimes the differences were small, 20 cents here, 40 cents there. But across an entire cart, these small amounts accumulated, leading to totals that were $10, $15, or even $20 higher for some shoppers than for others. Again, this wasn't due to delivery fees, promotions, or errors. The items themselves were priced differently. And crucially, these price differences were not random. This wasn't a glitch. Initially, one might think apps glitch or algorithms make mistakes, but this wasn't chaos. Shoppers were sorted into distinct price groups or clusters, where every item in their cart was consistently slightly higher or slightly lower than in other groups. Not just one or two items, but everything. This reveals something critical. It wasn't accidental pricing. It was systemic pricing, and that's where things become rather uncomfortable. What truly matters here is how the system behaved. This wasn't merely one item being off by a few cents. Entire carts were consistently higher or lower depending on the individual shopper. This tells us something vital. The system wasn't reacting to products, it was reacting to people, and that marks a significant shift. For decades, grocery prices were based on factors we could understand: supply costs, regional pricing, weekly sales. But now, especially online, pricing is increasingly handed off to algorithms whose objective is simple: figure out what you're most likely to pay and nudge prices right up to that line. Not high enough to deter you from buying, but just high enough to maximize profit. The term that repeatedly emerged in the investigation was surveillance pricing. This implies that companies no longer simply set prices based on supply and demand. Instead, they leverage data, your data, to determine how much you personally are willing to pay. This isn't based on demographics, which would be illegal, but on behavior. Factors include how often you shop, whether you compare prices, if you use coupons, your loyalty to a particular store, how quickly you check out, and whether you abandon carts. In essence, the more predictable and convenient you are, the more valuable you become to the algorithm. Consider the sheer volume of data involved. If you always shop Friday mornings, rarely abandon a cart, don't switch stores, avoid coupons, and prioritize speed over price, none of these traits mean you're careless with money. They indicate you're busy, responsible, and predictable. And predictability is incredibly valuable to these algorithms. This phenomenon extends far beyond Instacart. A key strength of the investigation was that it didn't stop at blaming a single app. When Instacart was questioned, they stated that the stores set the pricing. However, when some of the stores were queried, they claimed no involvement, asserting they weren't partnered with Instacart and had no idea why prices differed. This issue is pervasive, affecting major retailers like Walmart, Albertsons, Safeway, Target, and Costco. Some stores even use digital shelf labels that can change prices instantly, not for sales, but for continuous testing. This isn't surge pricing in a dramatic sense, but something far quieter. A few cents here, a few cents there every single day. That incremental approach is far more profitable than one large price jump. One of the most unsettling aspects of the investigation was the continuous shifting of responsibility. Instacart claimed retailers controlled prices, while retailers denied setting those specific prices. In some instances, Instacart later acknowledged it does manage pricing experiments for certain retailers. This gray area is crucial because when no one clearly owns pricing decisions, accountability disappears, and that's when consumers lose leverage. Here's why frugal women in particular are disproportionately affected by these systems. The women most impacted aren't reckless spenders, they are responsible individuals. These are women who shop regularly, feed families, stick to familiar stores, and value convenience because they are often exhausted and lack the time to chase 5 different sales. In other words, they are dependable customers. The system doesn't punish chaos, it rewards predictability for the company. Inflation provided companies with the perfect cover story, an easy excuse. When prices rise, we instinctively shrug and attribute it to inflation. I'm guilty of it too. But this investigation reveals that inflation wasn't the only force at work. It simply removed the fear of raising prices. Companies observed that people continued to buy because they had no choice, and the incentive shifted. The question became, how much more can we extract without you noticing? And that represents a truly dangerous shift. The part of all this that genuinely scared me isn't the pricing itself, but its invisibility. You can't easily compare receipts. You don't know what the person next to you paid. Prices change subtly, not dramatically, and in physical stores you might never even realize that testing is occurring. This lack of transparency is what should deeply concern us, because when systems operate quietly, accountability vanishes. So, what do we do with this information? First, we stop blaming ourselves. If grocery prices feel harder, if your budget feels tighter even though you're doing the same things you always have, that's not a personal failure. The environment has fundamentally changed. Second, we become less predictable, not more extreme. This doesn't mean spending hours chasing deals or never using pickup again. It means making small shifts that interrupt the data trail. Rotating stores occasionally, even just once a month, can help. Price check 1 or 2 staple items to stay anchored to reality. Don't assume loyalty programs always lower prices. Sometimes they primarily collect data. And when you use convenience, use it consciously, not automatically. Third, we separate frugality from deprivation. Frugality today isn't about squeezing harder. It's about staying alert within systems designed to quietly squeeze you. And finally, we talk about it. These systems thrive on silence, confusion, and isolation. Awareness remains one of the most powerful tools consumers possess. Here are smart habits that still protect you. First, variety matters. Rotating stores, even occasionally, breaks predictability. Second, price awareness matters, not obsession, just awareness. And third, convenience has a cost, sometimes hidden. That doesn't mean never using it. It means using it intentionally. Finally, loyalty programs are tools, not gifts. Use them, but never assume they're always working in your favor. This video didn't change how I shop. It confirmed why habits I've taught for years still matter. It underscores why being mindful beats mindlessness, and why systems favor speed and predictability, while frugality is a quiet resistance, not against progress, but against exploitation. If grocery shopping feels more mentally exhausting than it used to, if prices feel personal instead of logical, if you've felt that quiet frustration but couldn't explain it, you are not imagining it. This isn't about outsmarting algorithms. It's about refusing to move through these systems on autopilot. Once you see what's happening, you can make calmer, more intentional choices. And that's where resale power starts coming back into your hands. You might even want to shop in person more often. If this video resonated with you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe.